Saw these videos the other night, and I'd heard about these back when I did my Jack Hyles study, but they were not anywhere online, and now they are, so I'm going to be going over these. This channel here, Clarence Sexton's Crown, one of the Hiles hirelings, and they have the whole series down here of the Praying from the Pulpit series that was done by a local news media thing out there in Indiana, I believe it was. We'll see about this, but we're going to watch all the different programs. They're not very long. I want to make some comments as we go through this. Jack Hyles was a scoundrel. He was not a man of God. And it's important that I talk about this. People say, oh, he's dead, you know. Don't bring up the memory of the dead, blah, blah, whatever. His movement lives on. I'm going to show you who the modern day one who's trying to carry on in the legacy of Jack Hyles is. We'll talk about that here as we continue. But here we're going to watch part 1. This is going to tie in really well with the whole study I just did on the Jack Hyles cult of the hyper soul winning thing. So let's watch this. And I got to say this real quick too. The audio quality and the video quality is not the best. So we'll get through it here because it's, you know, old video.
He would call us in one by one and touch us.
Okay, little boy said he would call us in one by one and touch us. And by the way, I need to say this too. This is not a study for little children. Okay, if you have children, do not watch this around them. There's some very graphic things in this that's being brought out by the by the news media about this Hyles cult thing, and it's not just secular people slandering good, strong, Bible-believing Christians. These people, you can see this guy right here is one of the best soul winners that the Hyles cult ever produced, and he was a pedophile. And here he is going into court because of things he did to little boys, and it gets into some of the descriptions. So this is not for little children, okay? But it's very important that I bring this information out. Extremely important, because this system is continuing still today, and it's even more powerful now. All right, let's continue.
He is Mark Fuller, a soul winner in the bus ministry of North Sharon Baptist Church, southwest of Ann Arbor. Fuller's been in jail since late last year on charges he molested young children who had been brought to the church aboard his bus. At a court hearing earlier this year, 10-year-old JJ told how Fuller took him and several other little boys on a church camping trip. JJ and another youngster testified Fuller led them in group masturbation sessions and later ordered them into his tent one at a time to be sodomized or perform oral sex.
He would tell me to go out of the tent, and then he would call somebody else in.
9-year-old Mike testified about the pain of being sodomized by Fuller, the church bus driver.
I told him it hurt and for him to quit.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, he said, I told him it hurt and for him to quit. And the prosecutor or whatever said, did he? Did he quit, in other words? And he said, yeah. Soul winner. School bus kids ministry type of a thing here. And you know, oh, well, it's not Jack Hyles' fault. We're going to see about that. Let's just continue here.
When Fuller was arrested, detectives confiscated his Bible, which was autographed by controversial preacher Jack Hyles. Hyles presides over the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana, a fundamentalist house of worship. With hundreds of like-minded preachers from around the country loudly applauding, Hyles and Ohio attorney David Gibbs presented awards to key figures in the North Sharon Baptist Church as Defenders of the Faith. Pastor William...
That's interesting. They're defenders of the faith, because that's another thing. Some of the Catholic secret societies, some of the knighthoods in Catholicism, they'll do the same thing about defenders of the faith. Very, very interesting. Let's continue. But watch this, okay? What's going to come up, and it's kind of hard to hear what this commentator guy is saying. But what comes up is they literally say that that they give an award. This pervert that you just saw, the pedophile, he's not able to be there because he's in prison, but they give an award to the guy's wife. So in other words, they're giving awards to this guy as a soul winner, knowing that he's in jail for molesting children. This isn't, that they gave him the award there for being a great soul winner, and then it came out that he was a pedophile. No, no. he is a known pedophile at this point, and they are giving the guy an award for being a great soul winner. Get a hold of that. Let's continue.
William Winiger and Associate Pastor Timothy Leonard were congratulated by Hiles, who told them he was proud of them.
It's a jungle out there. And it is a jungle. But you stood in the jungle and held your head high and stood tall.
Mark Fuller's wife was given a special Christian Justice Award since her husband is still in jail facing child molesting charges.
So she got this thing. Mark Fuller's wife gets this award. You know, listen to what she says here. It's disgusting.
And I'm glad if my husband has to be in jail, it's for an eternal cause.
Okay, she just said, my husband is in jail for an eternal cause. These are sick people. Okay, very extremely sick. Again, the hyper soul winning thing is all about, if somebody is a soul winner, leading lots of souls to the Lord, they'll forgive anything, including molesting little boys. What church is it that molests little boys? I thought that was Catholicism. But the Baptists and Catholics don't have anything in common. Yeah, sure. And by the way, many examples of these guys, the Hiles graduates, the Hiles people that are involved in stuff like that were there in the Jack Hyles years, many of them have come out as sex perverts. Okay, a lot of them are getting arrested for perversion and stuff like that, just like the Catholics. Let's continue.
Rose Carr and Maxine Teachout are the mother and grandmother, respectively, of 3 boys allegedly molested by Mark Fuller. The 2 women were appalled at the awards presentation.
How can you want your husband home to live with him, sleep with him, and knowing he'd rather prefer a kid, according to all these stories? I just can't believe that. It's just like listening to the Jim Jones movie.
Okay. She said it's just like listening to the Jim Jones movie. You know, this whole thing of this guy. She's like, how can you go home with him? How could this wife go home with him and you know, sleep in the same bed as a man that prefers little boys? You know, having sex with little boys. And Jim Jones is did a whole study on him too. He was a pervert, and Alberto Rivera said, the ex-Jesuit that did the Chick interviews with Jack Chick and things, and they came out with the Alberto series of comics, and Alberto said that Jim Jones was a trained Jesuit, and I showed video of Jim Jones at his compound and an older black woman calling him father, like Catholic priest father. So weird. And Jim Jones was also a sodomite. You can watch my study and you can see the proof of that. But let's see the next part here, the part 2 of this thing.
Good evening, I'm Joe Glover. And I'm Rich Fisher. Here's our top story tonight. A special Eyewitness News investigation reveals the North Sharon Baptist Church child molesting scandal appears to be part of a pattern of such cases in churches that follow the teachings of a very controversial fundamentalist preacher. The North Sharon Baptist Church continues to have close ties to Jack Hyles, a nationally prominent fundamentalist who has been described by some ex-followers as a cult leader. TV2 investigator Vince Wade is here to tell us more in a special report called Praying from the Pulpit. Vince?
Well, Rich, Jack Hyles isn't as familiar to the public the way Jerry Falwell is, but among fundamentalists, he's admired and even revered. Several Detroit area churches have invited Hyles in for sermons. Those churches are in Pontiac, Rochester Hills, Port Huron, Belleville, Flint, and the North Sharon Baptist Church near Jackson. Now, that's not to say that there's a sex scandal in these churches, but they've heard the gospel preached by a man who's been accused of financial improprieties and a decades-long extramarital affair. The facts show Hyles and pastors like him have a low regard for women.
Okay, I gotta interject here again. What they'll do is they show Jack Hyles and what he's, doing, using women and stuff like this, and making some rather crude remarks about women, which you're going to see coming up here. And then they say, then they'll look at the things in the Bible. See, Jack Hyles calls the Word of God to be blasphemed and put down. The Bible doesn't teach down that women are somehow these horrible, creatures and whatever, like the Quran does. It's, women have a place of respect, okay, in the Bible. Again, but see, they'll take things, they'll twist scriptures where the average lost person doesn't understand when the Bible talks about a woman submitting to her husband, and they'll take that and then they'll show Hiles' brand of that to make it look really bad. Kind of like the thing of modern day. I'm just going to give away the thing here. Steven Anderson was trained at Hyles Anderson College, and we're going to show you the proof on that here in just a little bit. But he's, I think Jack Hyles is his hero, but because Jack Hyles was a mind control expert, and Anderson is definitely has ambitions in that area. But the Bible is against sodomy. There's no question about that. But the Bible does not say the radical things against sodomites that Steven Anderson brings out, that they should be executed publicly and all kinds of things like that in the New Testament. Old Testament, yeah, God's dealing with a nation, the nation of Israel. He's there and things in their government structure telling them what to do. All right. That's not the case with secular America or any other secular country right now. So again, I did a video on the thing of should homosexuals, the modern word there, be put to death. So you can watch that. But watch some of the stuff about Jack Hyles. It's just insane.
I said, you said, God made women the loveliest creatures on the face of the earth.
Now tonight, Jack Hyles may think women are lovely creatures, but they aren't treated very well in his ministry, nor by pastors who subscribe to his views. Hyles presides over the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana, just outside Chicago. Each year, he hosts a pastor's school for preachers from all over America. In 1981, he preached a sermon to his fellow pastors about how young girls' bodies were like the Holy Temple. He put a young girl named Arlene on display beside him as a visual aid for hundreds of other preachers as he thundered about the high priest entering the Holy Temple. This is a preacher who's used his pulpit to defend one of his deacons convicted of molesting a 7-year-old girl.
Arlene, you're very touchable for a young man, and I'm too old to even see you. But I could see why 100 young men want to touch her, couldn't you?
I think you're very touchable, and I can see why. I can see why 100 young men would want to touch her, can't you? Vulgar. I mean, what in the world? You people defend this guy. And I used to, because I used to be under the mind control of Jack Hyles. You listen to some of his preaching, his charismatic, seductive spirit that he has. He's a fraud, and he deceived a lot of people. He deceived a whole lot of people. But let's continue.
At the nearby Hyles Anderson Bible College, sex is always on a student's mind because the faculty is always reminding them of the potential for sin.
You are not supposed to touch the opposite sex at all until you're married. I think it would be very radical to the average American woman.
To understand what former student Gwen Kafitz means, listen to a dress code lecture given to new co-eds at Hyles Anderson College.
Any printing that goes, or anything that goes right across the bus line can't be worn.
Okay. It's hard to hear it again. I don't know if you heard it. She said any printing that goes across the bust line. In other words, where the woman's, but where the woman's breasts are. If there's lettering there, then you can't wear it. Okay, that's what she's saying.
You gotta look there to read it. That's where the letters are.
She says you gotta look there to read it. That's where the letters are. Again, some of the standards of these Bible schools are just, it's like chapter and verse, please. I mean, come on. I've known men talking with men and stuff like that are turned on by women wearing, like Amish and stuff like that cover up totally. So sex perverts are sex perverts. I mean, I obviously realize that there's immodest ways that women can dress, but the standards that were done here were ridiculous. And you're going to hear a really crazy one coming up. Listen to this.
But it was mentioned that you should wear Band-Aids over your nipples if you were
Had a large chest.
yes.
Okay? And if you didn't hear what she said, and I'm sorry not to say this, but she said that they were told to wear Band-Aids, women were supposed to wear Band-Aids over their nipples. And I'm going to talk more about this in just a minute, but let's hear the woman actually saying this.
And I don't mean to be gross or anything. You might want to even put Band-Aids in a certain place, if you know what I mean, because...
Women at Hyles... Anderson College are admonished to wear T-shirts under opaque blouses so bra straps don't show, and not to wear large earrings because that's what harlots wear.
Okay. See, again, this is something I've learned about for a long time. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes you get a pervert man or whatever else, and he goes after a woman, and if a woman plays hard to get, that makes it that much more exciting. Right? That's what's going on out here. I mean, if these standards that are set up there, you know, women, no lettering across there, putting band-aids over, you know, to keep any kind of lust down, and you have to have all these different standards. If that somehow fights lust, then why was there all kinds of sex perversion out there? It's insanity. See, you take the standards of Scripture, the Bible says modest apparel. You know, I mean, if you're a woman out there, you understand what modest and immodest means. Okay, the immodest thing is that, you know, different times if you were lost and you wore certain outfits and tended to get attention, you know what I mean, you know, the wrong kind of attention, that's immodest. Modest apparel is something that, you know, you're going to be walking around out there and you're not going to be getting men to lust after you. That's the difference there. And, you know, for thousands of years, women wore dresses. And all of a sudden, you know, they got to wear pants that are tight and everything else and very form-fitting and things like this. And then you get into the thing, oh, loose pants, or, you know, what about loose pants? Whatever. You know, we're not going to go into the whole modest apparel thing right now. But my point is, you go way to the far end of the spectrum where you just can't do this and you can't do that, and you have to, you know, and you get crazy after a while. And you end up actually causing more lust as a result of that. Because it's like this, you know, forbidden fruit thing. You know, it's like kind of in the military. There's so much sex perversion in the military. My wife told me stories about some of that stuff. There's so much sex perversion. Why? Because they're forced into a uniform. See? And it's extremely, you know, this lusty thing to be able to see a soldier, and, you know, a man sees a female soldier and thinks, I wonder what she'd look like outside of that uniform. Yeah. But let's continue here. And check this out.
Sunday, when Hiles preaches to his congregation, this man of God has reminders on either side of him that he's a man of the world. On his right in the choir is his wife, Beverly. On his left is his reputed mistress, Jenny Nishik Corley. She's the ex-wife of one of Hiles' former deacons. The two women have ignored each other for years.
So again, you got this woman that Hiles is fornicating with, his mistress there, his secretary. And again, that's in my study. You can see the study. I'm going to be referring to it here in just a little bit. But you have his wife sitting here and his fornicating, adulterous, whatever, over here. See, what's he doing? It's called, he's a master of mind control. And he is openly flaunting his sin in front of everybody else with the subliminal message of, you can't touch me. I can flaunt my sin openly right in front of your face, and I'm too powerful and too much in control of you stupid people for any of you to even confront me. And that those that did confront him on it, the one time I remember reading a thing, an account where he literally screamed, you're trying to destroy the independent fundamental Baptist movement or fundamentalism or something like that. Meaning him, that he's the head of it. I mean, the guy was just a total egomaniac. But let's continue.
The great fundamentalist who's often invited to preach in Michigan churches has all but ignored the stain on his ministry and people's lives left by the philandering of his son, David Hyles.
Okay, and they go into a little bit of it here, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to elicit lust in single men out there. If you don't want to watch this part, you know, they show, it's blurred out, but they show the guy's prostitute of a wife, David Hyles' wife. She's posing in pornography, and the things are blurred, but it's very lustily posed and things like that. And again, you know, this is some of that stuff that it's like, should I show this? Should I not show this? You know, and you go back and forth. But people that are innocent and they don't know, I have to show how bad things really are. And I mean, it's blurred out. It's not actually showing nudity, but it's just like, it's really truly this bad. And again, this is what was going on with the Jack Hyles cult. And there are still people that are promoting Jack Hyles and the system that he came up with hyper soul winning and a lot of this other movement. And again, you know, Jack Hyles preached against repentance. being, that you change your life. You change your mind about your self-righteousness, and you have a desire there to change your life. I'll say it that way. Jack Hyles preached very hard against that. I wonder why. Probably because he was, fornicating. He's a habitual fornicator. But let's continue here. This is graphic. I apologize in advance.
The younger Hiles had been the pastor of the Miller Road Baptist Church in Garland, Texas, until a janitor found photos of David Hiles having sex with a deacon's daughter. David's ex-wife Paula later confided in another pastor about her then-husband's illicit affairs with women in the Texas congregation. She didn't know he was taping the call.
All these women in our church thought they were the one and only. When it came out that there were 14 or 15 of them, we about had a war going on there.
And raising the devil. Jack Hyles ignored his son's adultery until a Christian on the lookout for sin found photos of David's second wife in some porn and swinger magazines. Brenda Hiles' holy temple was on display in a variety of explicit poses in magazines like Adam and Chicago Swingers. The photos were accompanied by ads seeking men, ladies, or couples for group sex. Dave Froelich went to Hiles-Anderson College with Brenda.
That at the moment you see her face, you'll know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is in fact Brenda.
You've seen the photograph? This Michigan businessman, we'll call him Fred, knows Dave and Brenda Hiles well. That's Brenda Hiles.
Yep. I feel badly for her. I think she's been used in the worst kind of way.
Jack Hyles was forced to face the bare facts from the pulpit when Schererville, Indiana attorney Voyle Glover, a former Hyles follower, put the photos on a flyer and led a Hyles loyalist to believe they'd be distributed at Hyles' 1991 pastor school.
I was totally shocked. I could not believe the sin the boy committed. They're going to walk up and try to hand you something. I'd prefer you wouldn't look at it. It is absolutely the most revolting, disgusting thing you've ever seen in your life, but it's true.
My wife would leave on weekends.
This man says his former wife was used by David and Brenda Hiles in their group sexcapades. It destroyed his marriage and his ex-wife's life.
My wife became intimately involved with both David and Brenda and numerous other men in the church that Dr. Hiles had endorsed as being spiritually astute people.
A number of people, because I know them personally, went to Dr. Hiles about the actions of his son, and for whatever reason, he failed to act. He failed to restrain his son.
Jack Hyles, who has...
Let me just pause there again. Again, I know people that were in these different Baptist churches, and they were talking about this stuff. I've met some of these people that have been running this circle here and stuff like that, and how that Jack Hyles literally... this is going on more than just they're talking about. This David Hyles, he was really insane with his fornication. And Jack Hyles was just moving from around a different Baptist church to Baptist church. And these are the same people that will condemn you if you don't go to church. Yeah. Sex perversion goes on all the time in these Baptist churches. It is a fact. Let's continue.
Used his pulpit several times to vigorously defend one of his deacons convicted in March of child molesting, has responded to our story by telling a Munster, Indiana newspaper that convicted child molesters should get the death penalty. Apparently, Hyles has changed his mind about his deacon, who faces sentencing on June the 10th. Rich?
It's what are the followers of Hyles saying about all this, if anything?
Well...
Okay. What are the followers of Hyles saying about this, if anything? Now watch what he says coming up here. This is very interesting.
They're in the dark about it for the most part because Hyles has conditioned them through mind control and brainwashing over the years not to listen to anything bad, that he's always for the accused, never the accuser, and you should...
He's used mind control and brainwashing over the years. I find that interesting. I say that kind of thing. People call me some crazy conspiracy nut or whatever else. They're saying it. Jack Hyles used mind control and brainwashing techniques, and he absolutely did. And a lot of the same Baptist preachers out there that were trained by Hyles, one way or the other, they might not have gone to Hack, but they get trained by a Hack graduate or whatever else. This system is spreading like a disease. These Hyles Baptists are literally trying to take over all the independent fundamental Baptist movement. It's a fact. Again, I've met people from that system. I had a brother tell me the one time, Marty Harwood was his name, Liberty Baptist Church, Ephrata, Pennsylvania. I'll tell you who it was. You know, I don't hide things and cover up names and whatever. But we had the whole thing of the door-to-door. We had the bus ministry. We had the whole thing. It was a Hiles spin-off church. And he told me the one time, he said that out there, actually with, you know, the First Baptist Church or whatever there in Hiles' church, they would actually go on bus routes out to pick up children. They'd go really, really far out into the city of Chicago and everything else. And they would find out if there were other churches that had bus ministries, and they would actually get there first and take, you know, they'd show, you know, say if this some other church said, hey, we'll be there at, you know, 8 o'clock or something, they would show up 5 minutes early, the Hiles guys, and say, oh yeah, we're here to take you to you know, the church that whatever. They'd take them to Jack Hyles' church. And stories of, you know, getting all the children on the bus to pray prayers and stuff like this, and then they count how many children got saved that day. Children didn't even know what they were doing. They were there, they were getting candy. They're like, hey, this is good. No idea. They're in the business of damning people and using mind control and brainwashing. Let's finish up this video. We'll go to the next one.
Shouldn't listen to any bad reports, as he calls them. All of this, as critics say, is a recipe for cover-up. And so a lot of them are just totally ignorant of this and will be shocked if they saw it.
More tomorrow.
More tomorrow night.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Okay. We'll go to the next one. Number 3. Let's watch this one.
Good evening, I'm Joe Glover. And I'm Rich Fisher. Here is our top story tonight. Eyewitness News has learned a group of fundamentalist churches around the country have a pattern of abusing children. The abuse includes severe discipline. In one case, there was sadistic torture, and in another, it may have involved murder. As we've told you in a series of special reports this week exclusively on Eyewitness News, TV2 investigator Vince Wade has learned the alleged child molestings at Washtenaw County's North Sharon Baptist Church appear to be part of this pattern of abuse. Vince joining us now with another of his special reports on praying from the pulpit. Vince?
Okay, let me just stop there. Now think about the buzzwords if you are aware of the truth, okay? Mind control, brainwashing, torture of children. It's classic textbook monarch programming, MK Ultra programming, whatever you want to call it, being done in Baptist churches. And I remember Steven Anderson saying at one point in time that he was bred to be a Baptist preacher. And his mother was the one. She raised me to be a Baptist preacher. You say, oh, come on, you're reading into it. Am I? Am I? Out there with right around the Roland Rasmussen area and things like this. Roland Rasmussen, another one of these. He wasn't a student of Hiles, but he was a contemporary. A guy that knew Hiles, talked about Brother Jack Hyles and things like this. And he was one of the ones that came up with the whole post-trib, pre-wrath system. He's the one that got Kent Hovind, you know, supposedly swayed over. All ties together. It's insane. But I want you to just see this one. This one's very, very important, especially at the end. But let's continue here. This one's very, very, very grievous. I'll say that.
Rich, the leadership of the North Sharon Baptist Church was educated at a Bible college in Schererville, Indiana, run by Jack Hyles, a hellfire and brimstone preacher well known in fundamentalist circles. Over the last few years, Hiles has been a source of scandal and controversy for fundamentalist believers. Hiles has one son, David, who had his own ministry until he was run out of 2 churches due to scandals involving wives in his congregations. As you will see, the son of the famous preacher man is a suspect in something far more serious than adultery. David Hiles set out to follow in his father's footsteps, but his zest for women cost him his pulpit and his first marriage. When David left a Texas church in disgrace, he and his girlfriend, Brenda Stevens, moved to Bolingbrook, Illinois, with her 2 children by her first marriage. It wasn't long before her youngest son, 17-month-old Brent Stevens, came to the attention of abuse investigators. In 1985, they found him with a broken leg plus 8 or 9 bones in various stages of healing.
Okay, another one that was in my video I did was, oh, I cannot think of her name, Eleanor, Combs. And Joe Combs was one of the professors at Hiles Anderson College, and he was beating his own daughter, Eleanor Combs, and she was being raped over and over and over again by men of the church, the Joe Combs' church. They'd take her into the locker room and they would beat her with hammers, chains, all kinds of things like this. She had over 400 scars on her body as an older, when she got older. And, I mean, it's disgusting. Let me just show you here real quickly. Just to show you this. Right there he is, Joe Combs, Hiles Anderson's foremost Bible teacher. He's a PhD. These people are sick. They are literally monsters. And this dear little boy here, it just breaks my heart. I mean, it just fills me with anger towards these people that would do this to him. Little boy, breaking his legs. And they, eventually killed him. But that woman that you saw there earlier, down in here, you can see the little thing there. She's the same one that was posing in these nude magazines and stuff like this. And the two of them, her and her husband, are having group sex with other people. And I remember there was a couple of, I'm going to keep their names private because, this is kind of a bad thing that they had to go through, but they were listening to my studies where I was telling people don't go to church. These Baptist churches are wicked, and they were kind of like, whatever, And here they found out, it came out that their pastor and his wife were doing the same thing. They were fornicating with people from the community. Group sex, Baptist church. And people of the congregation knew about it, and they literally didn't want the guy to have to be forced out. There were literally people in the congregation, professing Baptist Christians, that were literally defending the pastor and his wife's actions. And another brother, I requested prayer and financial help for him with the trial and things. And his Baptist pastor, King James Bible-believing, quote-unquote, Baptist pastor, was raping this brother's, or molesting, I shouldn't say raping, but molesting this brother's twin 8-year-old girls. St. John was his last name. This Baptist preacher. It goes on all the time, brethren, in these Baptist churches. They're hellish sinners. It's just terrible. Let's continue.
Paul Cialino was a homicide investigator for the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. He and his team fought, unsuccessfully, to keep Brent away from David and Brenda.
I wasn't concerned this child was going to be abused again. I was concerned this kid was going to wind up dead. That was my concern.
His concern was justified. A few months later, Brent Stevens was found dead in his crib. Due to bureaucratic bungling, an inconclusive autopsy was done at a hospital instead of the morgue. But at the inquest, David Hyles invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Brenda, the mother of the dead child, was a no-show. As for the status of the investigation,
this case is an open case still today, and nothing's been done.
Can anything be done with this?
Absolutely. It's a murder case. I would even go further and say that if I could get David and Brenda in a court of law, they'd both get convicted of murder, without a doubt. I have a dead child with a history of abuse, and I had two people who were the only people who accessed that child that night. And I would almost bet that 12 of their peers would convict them on almost dead evidence alone.
I mean, burn in hell, David Hyles and his Brenda, whatever. Just disgusting. Killing your own child. Makes me so mad. But let's just continue here. This one's only 42 seconds long. And again, I find it interesting. Oh, they're just little innocent, sweet little independent fundamental Baptists, but somehow they're getting away with murder. And they're doing the same things that the CIA does with mind control, MK Ultra type of stuff, and Roman Catholic priests molesting and raping children. But they're Baptists, Yeah. Let's continue.
tonight, Jack Hyles told the Associated Press the allegations in our reports are, quote, vicious lies, all of them. Hyles has not acknowledged our request for an interview. Tomorrow night at 11, the facts behind claims Hyles is running a cult without a compound.
Richard, I have to believe you're getting a lot of reaction from this series.
Okay, now listen, this guy, here he says, I have to believe you're getting a lot of reaction. Get a hold of this one, okay? This is Jack Hyles' people. And they literally says, the guy's sitting there and he has this big thing of yellow papers here, the little cards and stuff like this, of people sending letters, phone messages, all kinds of things, threatening the news station. I have had experience with this for many years now. Again, the modern day little spin-off of Jack Hyles is Steven Anderson and his cult. Steven Anderson's cult, you come out with a video against the guy and you will just be flooded with Andersnake zombies. I call them active duty. There's a little wink wink there. A lot of them are. Active duty Andersnake zombies. Trolls that are there to just come on and just attack and things like this. They do it all the time. And these people are so filthy and so profane. Just all kinds of wicked profanity and just dirty, horrible things that they'll say to Christians. And then they claim to be Christians. It's so interesting to me. But it's the exact same thing that they were doing with these guys here that are bringing stuff out about Jack Hyles. It's the same corrupt, satanic cult. The hyper soul winning, no repentance, get your butt in church, we're Baptist, militant Baptist. It's the same exact crowd. Hyles is dead, Steven Anderson is alive. That's why I've been warning about this guy. So when you say, oh, you're obsessed with Steven Anderson and things like this, I'm obsessed with truth. All right? And I know what this system is all about. They're covert Catholics that have crept into the body of Christ and they're posing as independent fundamental Baptists. They're not Baptists. Not true. You go back far enough to the real Baptists of the past, hundreds of years ago. No resemblance at all to the modern IFB cult. All right? Let's watch a little bit more. And listen to what this guy says. Listen to this. And for those of you out there that have exposed Steven Anderson in some way and you get attacked by his followers, watch this.
Report so far. Oh, tons of phone calls. Some people saying they're glad we're doing it, but we're having an organized phone campaign that the Hyles Anderson students have conducted. These are some of the phone messages from all over the country. People that haven't seen our report are calling in saying it's all a vicious lies, and that's interesting that people that haven't seen the facts are just calling in with blind faith, like a cult.
Isn't that interesting? People that haven't seen our reports are calling in with blind faith saying it's all vicious lies. It's exactly the same today. All these Andersnake zombies are just writing, you didn't cover this, you're just attacking Pastor Anderson. He's more of a man than you. He gets better views. He's a better preacher. He's winning lots of souls to the Lord. Blah, blah, blah. Did you watch the video? I don't have time to watch your video. I'm not going to watch your video. It's slanderous lies. It's the same crowd, people. It's the same satanic cult. Incredible. Let's continue.
Sounds like an organized effort.
Oh, it is an organized effort. These students have been told to call in. It's organized.
All right. More tomorrow then. Sure. Thanks.
An organized campaign. They've been told to call in and make trouble. Told to comment. Crazy. Okay, let's watch the next one.
And still another major story tonight. A controversial fundamentalist preacher with ties to at least a half dozen Michigan churches may be the next David Koresh. That's the assessment of some of his ex-followers who claim independent Baptist pastor Jack Hyles engages in mind control and retaliation against those who question his teachings. TV2 investigator Vince Wade has spent 2 months researching Jack Hyles and his followers. He joins us now with his special reports we're calling Praying from the Pulpit. Vince?
Rich, Jack Hyles is closely associated with Washtenaw County's North Sharon Baptist Church, which is in the midst of a child molesting scandal. He recently presented so-called Justice Awards to the pastor and assistant pastor. Both men are graduates of his Bible college in Indiana. Throughout the country, including Michigan, there are ex-believers in Jack Hyles' brand of Christianity who say they fear the Indiana fundamentalist is running a cult without a compound.
How many bells? What's going on now?
The deadly confrontation between federal agents and David Koresh's followers was the apocalypse for a group of paranoid, secretive fanatics who had armed themselves against the outside world. David Koresh convinced his believers he was God on earth.
Okay, just stop there for 1 minute. Now, the truth about David Koresh, because I've studied in detail the whole Waco, Texas thing, was David Koresh was immorality. He was mind controlled, and he was sent out there, I believe, as a test to be able to train government troops. You know, the hostage rescue team, it was the FBI's at HRT was there, but it was mostly, and Delta Force, they say Delta Force was there, boots on ground at the Branch Davidian compound down in Waco, Texas. It was basically a radical sect of Seventh-day Adventists, is what the Branch Davidians were. And they were this ultra-radical sect, and it was basically founded by an old woman, and David Koresh became initiated by her through fornication, because, and they literally taught that David Koresh was the upward triangle and the woman was the downward triangle, and the combination of the two. I'm not joking. That's what they taught. And so he was initiated to become the head of that cult, the Branch Davidians, through fornication with this old woman. Real nice. And so then he was there, and they had all these people that were coming there, and they would live there, and they had different ways of making money. They had a body shop. The women made quilts and baked goods, if I remember correctly. And they also converted firearms from semi-automatic to fully automatic. And they had a license to do it. It was perfectly legal at the time. But what happened is the license ran out, and they made a couple firearms fully automatic without, you had to do it, you had to have a license to do that, and also had to fill out a form saying that you were, for each gun that you did this. And they didn't do that. They were remiss in their duties. Well, the ATF got involved and sent some of their guys over, and kind of like, with this whole thing of the ATF. And the ATF went in, and it was way ridiculous show of force, their original raid on the Branch Davidian compound. And David Koresh came to the front door and said, hey, let's just talk about this. Well, they started shooting at him. David Koresh's father-in-law was behind the door, and he got shot and fell down dead. David Koresh got hit in the stomach, and then it just ignited from there. And David Koresh had a revelation that he was actually the Lamb of God, and that it was up to him to open the different seals in the book of Revelation. Guy was a nut, okay? But the point is, they went in there, and when he had this revelation, by the way, too, part of it was that all the men that were there could no longer have relations with their wives, intimate relations with their wives. They had to, David Koresh was now in charge of all the women, and he was to have children through all these different men's wives. Real scriptural position there, I mean, just read the Bible, you quickly see that was wrong. So it was definitely a cult, but the point is, they went in there and they killed innocent women and children. And then they weren't shooting guns and whatever else. I mean, it was totally wrong what the federal government did down there, how they handled it. Very, very, very bad. But it was all part of this mind control thing, and there was a bunch of other stuff that was involved there, which I'm not going to get into. But ridiculous. But see, again, they're going to show Jack Hyles here with a gun, and they're going to say, oh, see, gun-owning, Christians, oh boy. It's absurd. But let's continue here.
Fundamentalist preacher Jack Hyles doesn't claim he's God, but he's convinced a lot of people he's the next best thing. He once brandished a rifle while he was preaching, and he frequently warns his congregation about the enemies of his ministry, meaning anyone who questions what he says.
Everything is all right. Last Monday I went to preach in Michigan. I wasn't in my room yet, the pastor told me that a threat had come on the phone that morning. I live that way.
Did someone in Michigan threaten to kill Jack Hyles? If so, why? His devoted followers don't know and don't care. Hiles presides over the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana. One of his deacons, A.V. Ballinger, was recently convicted of molesting a 7-year-old girl in Sunday school. At the trial, Hiles' believer Wes Miller was a self-appointed cheerleader and scout for enemies. On a recent Sunday outside Hiles' church, Miller accused me of sneaking into the Ballinger trial.
You're in my way now. If you don't mind stepping out of the way.
You have a nice day now.
You say, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I bet you
I apologize.
That was nice Christian behavior of yours.
Well, the sign was just in the way, and I apologize very much.
I appreciate your apology. That was really Christian of you.
I would say it's very, what do you want to say, cultish is a word that comes to my mind immediately. It's very cultish.
There are some cult-like tendencies at the church.
Perhaps these former church members recollect Jack Hyles' 1990 poison sermon.
I have some poison I plan to pour in here. Notice the bones and the skull there. Now then, if I walked up tonight and I said to you, I've got something I want you to drink. In fact, Brother Colston, I'd like you don't mind to drink this? How you like that? He said, if you want me to, I'll drink it. That's what you call real loyalty.
Okay, and that's a true thing. This actually happened at, I don't know if it was one of the preacher conference things that Hiles would put on, but he would do these things to show that, you know, you need to be loyal to your preacher, the man of God. And all these Hiles affiliates and stuff like this. There was a guy, he was going to Anders Snake's church, Victor Tay. He's over in Australia now, but he lived in America for like a year, and he was calling Anderson Steve or Steven. And Anderson just like flipped out and screamed about it, and he's like, you know, my name is not Steve, it's Pastor Anderson. You know, they have this egomaniac, you know, mindset where you have to, I'm the man of God here. You don't dare, you know, say my name, first name basis. You know, we're not on the same level and things like this. Yeah. And Hiles would actually do this thing where he would put a leash on another preacher, you know, and stuff, and make him submit to him like that, you know, like a little dog on the ground. And he had this one thing, he put liquid in there, and oh, this is poison. And he hands it to a preacher. He says, here, drink it. You know, I'm your preacher. You trust me. Drink it. You know, where's this stuff at in Scripture? It's not there. It's mind control. What it's all about. Let's continue.
It has the ring of Jonestown to it. That was the mass suicide in Guyana in 1978 by followers of cult leader Jim Jones. Royal Glover is an attorney and former Hiles church member. He's written a book on Hiles called Fundamental Seduction.
What they have done basically is what every cult does. They exchange the truth for whatever comes out of the mouth of the leader. And that is a cult. That is not Christianity.
Hiles tells traitors to crawl out of the church and into the city sewer.
I've heard this so much. Brother Hiles, we're going to go back home. Well, go on back home. Don't clutter this place up with a bunch of yellow-bellied quitters.
You can call it brainwashing. You can call it various forms of spiritual mind control. But it's very, very effective to reject the pastor. Is in essence rejecting God. And they come to believe that.
Jack Hyles has surrounded himself with a well-armed security force. Uniformed men with karate-type nightsticks and .357 Magnums patrol the house of God on the lookout for enemies.
Okay, first of all, that's going a little bit too far for this news agency. Having security guards at a place like that is not a big deal. All right, that's not, oh, that's their compound or something. You're stretching it. Okay, you're stretching it. But this whole thing of, again, this man of God gets put up on this pedestal and you don't dare question the man of God and everything else. That's mind control. All right, that's very dangerous to get into that whole thing there. But let's continue.
There has been a growing tendency in that church to become an armed camp.
Bill Waddell, the chief of police of Griffith, Indiana, and a former member of Hiles' congregation, says he's seen men come to the church armed because they were inspired to protect Brother Hiles. Terry Kilgore is a former Hiles security guard who says he knows for a fact some radical Hiles followers have been buying guns.
Yeah, there's fellows there that are stocking up. I mean, I've talked to some who say, yeah, we're stocking up on weapons.
Why are they stocking up on weapons?
Well, they think that the devil is taking over and that their only hope is to fight and protect that they love and live for. The place is an armed camp in many ways.
Vic Nishik is a former deacon at Hiles Church.
There are people in this church who would kill for Jack Hyles.
That is correct. And I can testify to the fact that when I was under his mind control, I would have killed too if you told me to.
Okay. Vic Nishik is the guy whose his wife Jenny, was the one that Hiles was fornicating with. So, you know, and you know, I've seen this whole thing. The people just worship the pastor. It's insanity. Let's continue.
We have an audio tape of one of Jack Hyles' loyal followers who preached that when he starts to pray, sometimes he gets mixed up and begins to pray to Hiles instead of God. You need more proof of the idolatry of Jack Hyles? Exhibit A might be this souvenir that was passed out at the 100th anniversary of First Baptist Church of Hammond. If you can't be Brother Jack, apparently the next best thing is to put on a false face. Tomorrow night at 11, we'll examine the money Jack Hyles received.
Okay, let me just pause there for a minute. And again, you know, there's all kinds of stories. You know, Jack Hyles putting his picture underneath coffee cups that, you know, people can see it, and giving out all kinds of these little games and stuff like this to get the numbers in and get, you know, the money. Guy was a total stinking scam artist. Just disgusting. And, you know, what do you think? Why do you think Steven Anderson flies all over the country and all over different countries and things like this, being followed around by a professional Hollywood film producer, videotaping everything he does? Let's continue.
Hard to believe that he represents all fundamentalists.
Well, he certainly doesn't, and that's an important point that we need to make in fairness to other people. He doesn't represent all fundamentalists, and he certainly doesn't represent all Christians. This is the Jack Hyles brand of fundamentalism.
And again, more tomorrow.
More tomorrow night at 11 on money.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sickening. But let's continue here. Not much more to go. This is the number 6 one, then there's another one. So let's watch it. Okay, try to start over here.
Timothy Leonard recently received the so-called Defender of the Faith Justice Award from a controversial fundamentalist preacher with a large following in Michigan. That preacher, Jack Hyles, has been accused of serious financial improprieties by some ex-followers who say he is a cult leader. Hyles, an independent Baptist pastor based in Hammond, Indiana, is regarded as a national leader for at least 6 churches in southeast Michigan, including the North Sharon Baptist Church, where Timothy Leonard is an associate pastor. TV2 investigator Vince Wade joins us with another special report called Praying from the Pulpit. Vince?
Thank you, Rich. You may not have heard of him, but thousands of ultra-conservative fundamentalists know who Jack Hyles is. He preaches that old-style religion, yet he rakes in money in the modern tradition of a Robert Tilton or Jim and Tammy Baker.
Thank God for the Pope. He's against abortion. He's always been for getting all the Catholics he can get.
Brother Jack Hyles likes to boast he runs the largest Sunday school in the world. He may be right. Before a cloud of scandal drifted over his First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana, Hyles bragged he had a membership of 100,000. The Hyles empire is formidable. In addition to his church, he runs Hyles Anderson Bible College in Schererville, Indiana. Anderson is Russell Anderson, a wealthy Ypsilanti land developer. He's reportedly donated millions of dollars to Hyles over the years. His secretary says he's been on an extended trip and not available for an interview about his relationship with Hyles. Most of Hyles' followers don't have Russell Anderson's deep pockets, but it's not uncommon for believers to donate 20% of their income to Brother Hyles.
The only person who knows where the money goes is Jack Hyles. He's said from the pulpit he spends the money that comes into his ministry any way he sees fit.
The deacon board at First Baptist of Hammond is described as a rubber stamp for Hyles.
They fear disagreeing with him because they fear that they're disagreeing with God.
Child support payments to Jack Hyles' former daughter-in-law, Paula Hyles, are an example of the preacher's questionable financial practices. When Hyles' son David fell behind on his payments, Paula began receiving payments from a church checking account. First Baptist of Hammond appears to be in violation of IRS rules for tax-exempt organizations. Bill Waddell is the police chief of Griffith, Indiana. He was a deacon in Hyles' church when the child support was paid with church funds.
Did you ever see these or hear about these monies being paid out?
No.
Think any of the other deacons did?
Not that I'm aware of.
And they've laid the foundation.
Hyles travels to cities all over America to preach and to accept offerings for his pulpit-pounding sermons. He advertises his appearances in fundamentalist newspapers. Hyles also sells video and audio tapes of his sermons. When you listen to them, you won't hear God or Jesus mentioned very often. Mostly, you hear Jack Hyles preaching about Jack Hyles. It all comes from Hyles' publications. No one seems to know if it's his private company or a church ministry.
Well, I cannot understand why the IRS hasn't gotten him, because of the fact that it's under the canopy of the church and all this money comes to him.
Jack Hyles doesn't live lavishly, unlike controversial televangelist Robert Tilton.
For him, money is a way to buy loyalty. He gives gifts to make people loyal to him.
Jenny Nishik Corley has received a lot of gifts from Hyles over the years, and she's intensely loyal to him. She's reputedly been Jack Hyles' mistress since 1969. Every Sunday, she sits on his left in the choir. Hyles' wife, Beverly, sits on the right. Jenny was the wife of Vic Nishik, who was a deacon in the church and used to be one of Hyles' close friends.
I knew for many years that there was an immoral sexual relationship between them.
Vic's home wasn't really his home. He was banished to the basement on Pastor Hyles' advice as a marriage counselor. In 1989, when the scandal surfaced publicly in a fundamentalist newspaper, here's what Hyles told the syndicated program A Current Affair.
A fellow who would allow an outsider to send him to the basement would be a wimp.
When Vic Nishik objected to living in the basement, Hyles paid for a dormer to be built over the garage.
I would come home, I would find a new washer, dryer, and new furnace. He paid all the bills.
Hyles denied the affair, sort of.
I've had one woman in my life, John. One woman in my life. That's the mother of my children.
That's not the same as denying outright that he's ever had sex with Jenny Nishik. Boyle Glover, an Indiana attorney and former member of Hyles' congregation, totaled the money and gifts Hyles has admitted giving or loaning to Jenny Nishik. He says his conservative estimate exceeds $100,000.
Yeah, you don't give a woman you're not married to over $100,000 just because you're generous.
I consider myself as having been under total mind control of a religious fanatic, yes.
I mean, watch my Jack Hyles study. Look at the funeral of Jack Hyles. David Hyles stands up and speaks at his dad's funeral. Preaches a little sermon. People are amening him and stuff like this. After the guy, all this stuff comes out, he's a pervert, you know, marries a porn star, and then they murder their child, for crying out loud, and he's preaching in the pulpit at Jack Hyles' church. You know? And there's guys in there standing up there going, you know, when we get to heaven, I hope God allows us to have a little bit of time with Brother Hyles, and, you know, I don't know if we're going to be able to speak to him when we get to heaven. And yeah, mind control. Mind control. You need to understand that. It's just disgusting to me. But we're going to continue here. We'll finish this up, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things yet.
Last night, Jack Hyles told his congregation he's organizing a national protest against TV2 on June 1st. He's calling on 400 like-minded preachers to come to Detroit, where he claims he will hold a press conference to answer questions about his ministry. 4 child molesting victims' rights groups have announced they intend to stage a counter-demonstration against Hyles and his followers. We've noted throughout these special reports that Jack Hyles has ignored our requests for an interview. Today, TV2 News Director Mort Meisner contacted Mr. Hyles, and he declined once again our invitation to respond to our story in an interview with me. We also asked Hyles to appear live on Straight Talk with Rich Fisher. Again, he declined. Hyles said, "I decline to be interviewed by your station. I don't trust your station. I will do interviews with other stations." News Director Meisner then thanked Jack Hyles and wished him the best of luck. Hyles told Meisner he wished Mort, quote, the poorest of luck. Tomorrow night, the story of private eyes and dirty tricks aimed at children who dared to say they'd been molested by so-called men of God.
Well, Vince, the invitation stands for him to appear on Straight Talk. Do you think he is really serious about doing interviews with other stations, other members of the media?
Well, he may. The key question for us is if he comes to Detroit and he says he's going to hold a press conference, people that are watching this program tonight should pay attention to whether or not he meets with the reporters privately or whether he decides to do this with a gallery of people going amen and right on preacher. Because if he does, then he's posturing and doesn't really want to answer the questions. So that'll be the key. If he does show up here June 1st, people should be watching to see if he talks with us privately in a professional press conference setting.
Okay. Your final report tomorrow.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
Okay. They said there at the end that, you know, if he shows up and he does this thing privately or whatever else, he didn't. Right here's the school or the children conference thing that he did. And it was all kinds of people in there amening, screaming, yelling, and stuff like this. I watched the whole thing back when I did my first study exposing Hyles as the heretic that he was. and he didn't cover anything. It just, it's just malicious lies, and it's just terrible. They're lying about us. They're lying and everything else, covered, it's against God's man, and all stuff. Yeah. He's a fraud, and those who follow him are frauds as well. Let's continue here. This is the last video. Let's watch this one quick.
Eyewitness News has learned the families of the children allegedly molested in the North Sharon Baptist Church case are being shadowed and harassed by private detectives. Even one of the state police detectives investigating the case has reported attempts to keep him under surveillance. TV2 investigator Vince Wade has reported the North Sharon case is part of what appears to be a national string of molesting cases involving independent Baptist churches led by a controversial preacher. Vince joins us now with another special report called Praying from the Pulpit.
Okay, can I say this real quickly? The brother that I talked about earlier that had his twin daughters, the 8-year-old girls, molested by their Baptist preacher, he actually said to me, he said that there were members of that church that were coming to him and saying, you should have handled this thing privately. You shouldn't have gone to the law about this. You shouldn't have spoken against the pastor there. Yeah, that's sick. That's how sick these people are. But, there's a campaign to attack those that are going against Jack Hyles. Interesting. Let's continue.
Rich, the North Sharon Baptist Church and half a dozen other fundamentalist churches in southeast Michigan subscribe to the views of Hammond, Indiana preacher Jack Hyles. North Sharon is one of 7 Hyles doctrine churches around the country identified as having faced child molesting scandals. Hyles' own First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana is one of them. Last March, church deacon A.V. Ballinger was convicted on charges he molested a 7-year-old girl in Sunday school. Not only has Hyles defended Ballinger from the pulpit, he's said Christians shouldn't settle such matters in heathen courts.
If we can judge the world someday, we can judge within ourselves. A.V. Ballinger should not be judged in the courts of Hammond. He should be judged by wise people in First Baptist Church of Hammond, if he's judged at all. Now tonight, for years...
If he's judged at all, how about that? But this whole thing of, it shouldn't be the lost world judging and things like this. Judgment, according to the scriptures, is that judgment begins at the house of God as far as if a country is going wicked, okay? But there is the thing of judging within the church there. And what you do is if somebody is committing something that is offending somebody or false doctrine or whatever else, then you judge that person, among saved Christians. If they're doing things that are illegal and contrary to the laws of God, not only that, but also to the laws of the land, then you take them before the secular laws that God has, or the secular lawgivers that God has appointed. I mean, Romans chapter 13 talks about that. Just turn there real quickly. Romans chapter 13, verse 1, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of wrath, or minister of God, a revenger, to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Okay, verse 5, ye, it's talking about Christians are to be subject unto the higher powers, the secular police and things like that. And if you're doing good, I mean, I am not one bit worried about police coming here today. You know why? I'm not doing anything illegal. Why would I be worried about the police? Anyhow, let's continue.
Jack Hyles has preached he's always for the accused, never for the accuser. Hyles says he won't listen to malicious gossip. His critics say it's a recipe for cover-up, which permits denial of scandals like child molesting.
We're not supposed to go to court in the Bible, black and white.
Hyles and his followers have done more than defend their deacon. Hyles' son-in-law suggested in a sermon that on one occasion the 7-year-old victim came on to him.
The little 7-year-old girl who supposedly accused A.V. Ballinger rode my bus route for a year.
First time I met her, she jumped in my arms, affectionately hugged on me. I had to have the bus captain, or co-captain, pry her arms off of my neck. Most affectionate, loving, kissing, hugging girls I've ever met.
The victim had been one of the so-called...
That's disgusting. Okay, absolutely disgusting. That Jack Schaap would try to blame child molestation on a 7-year-old girl. And then he later on comes out and he's a sex pervert as well. Sickening. And again, what's one of the big reasons? First of all, these guys are not saved. Okay, you're not going to be a child molester and be saved. Don't even tell me about it. They're not saved, first of all. They're preaching a false gospel that removes repentance, removes conviction of sin as a lost sinner, that says, I need to be saved. You know, that's disgusting right there. Okay. Secondly, they're in phallic temples that are just lightning rods. The steeple on the top is just a lightning rod for all kinds of sex perversion in that place. You know, the history, the church building history goes back to two things: Greek Parthenons and obelisks. Right. Again, I've done studies on that, the whole thing of the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church, showing that architecture of most church buildings, and specifically so this one that Hiles called, it's based on Greek Parthenons where they were having ritual sex and things like that, and obelisks, which is a statue celebrating the male member, the uncircumcised male member. Just to tell you exactly what it means. So it's not a bit of wonder these guys are just you know, ranting, raving sex perverts. But let's continue.
Called bus kids. So with the victims in the North Sharon Church case. The pastor and associate pastor of North Sharon Church graduated from Hiles Anderson Bible College, where students spend long hours using buses to go soul winning in poor neighborhoods. The results can be seen at Hiles First Baptist Church in Hammond, Indiana.
Every Sunday, the so-called bus kids are brought in by the thousands. Most of them are from poor neighborhoods.
Poor children are targeted because their parents view it as Christian babysitting, and young minds are impressionable to indoctrination. Hiles and his followers have never expressed concern for the little girl Deacon Ballinger molested. In fact, prosecutor Clarence Murray says his witnesses were harassed.
Everything from phone calls to little notes left in the mailboxes.
It's the same story in the North Sharon molesting case. Lieutenant Gary Krogelka commands the Ypsilanti State Police Post, which is handling the investigation.
We have private detectives who have been contacting the parents of victims, who have been videotaping the victims, these child victims, as they play with their playmates, take pictures of them as they get on and off school buses, and so on. In one case, a victim had given us a complete statement after what had occurred, and after being contacted, after the family was contacted by these detectives, the victim recanted his story. We've even had a situation where one of our own investigators has been tailed and under surveillance by these detectives, by these private investigators.
Interesting. So the goons from the Hiles cult are actually using military-type police tactics to harass the police. You know, yeah, okay, threatening the victims of the, you know, stuff that's going on at the Hiles cult there, and then they themselves are using weird, you know, surveillance-type techniques and things to harass people. It's odd. Let's continue.
Rose Carr, on the left, has two sons, ages 8 and 9, who were allegedly molested in the North Sharon case. Maxine Teachout, on the right, has a grandson who was 4 years old when he was allegedly molested by North Sharon bus minister Mark Fuller, who remains in jail awaiting trial. Last week, someone broke into Rose Carr's home and stole materials related to the case.
And why do our children have to be photographed by private investigators hired by the church? Why do we have to worry about break-ins? Why do we have to worry about our families being hassled? And I can't believe them people. What the hell is the matter with them?
Both women say no matter what happens to Mark Fuller, their children and grandchildren have been sentenced for life.
And the only thing we can do is trust the words of a little bitty kid that leaves the courtroom after preliminary hearing and cries in Grandma's lap and said, "Why is the judge and the lawyers, why are all those people mad at me? What did I do wrong, Grandma? I didn't do anything wrong." And then he takes his mom's cigarette lighter and tries to light his clothes on fire. I want to get dead and be with the good people so Mark won't be mad at me anymore. But he's not mad at me, Grandma, because I didn't tell it all.
No.
Just disgusting. These little children are just scarred permanently. Again, I knew a guy, you know, growing up with him in school. Travis Metzler was his name, and he was molested at a Methodist camp, and ended up killing himself a number of years ago. Committed suicide. Disgusting. But let's continue.
No one knows how many other kids haven't told it all among the nearly 200 churches nationwide in which preacher Jack Hyles and his views of God and justice are held in high regard. Jack Hyles told Indiana reporters our special report has a...
On Tuesday that the Hammond police are concerned that A.V. Ballinger, the Hiles deacon convicted of child molesting, has been passing out candy to children outside the church on Sunday morning. Ballinger reportedly resumed his church bus route the weekend after he was convicted. He should be sentenced on June the 10th.
Yes, I think we should mention one more time that Hiles does not represent all fundamentalists.
That's absolutely right. He doesn't represent all fundamentalists and all Christians. A good example is Miller Road Baptist Church in Garland, Texas, where his son damaged that church by having 14 or 15 affairs with women in the church. They've renounced Hiles and all of his teachings and have gone on their way and rebuilt themselves. So everybody doesn't follow Hiles. We know the story is far from over. That's right. We're going to stay on it. You will. Thank you.
All right. So there you go. Here's my video and that I did on the truth about Jack Hyles here. I want to play something that's very important, because what Jack Hyles did, Jack Hyles was far bigger than most people realize, and what he did is he wanted to create a movement, and literally the movement is just running rampant right now. It's totally fulfilling what Jack Hyles wanted. Let's watch this little clip here, and this was their promotional video from their own Hyles Anderson College thing here. You can watch this, my series, The Truth About Jack Hyles, Part 1. It's got 55,708 views right now as of the making of this video. But watch this. Listen to what he says.
Hyles Anderson College, I often say, is not a college, it's an army. Our students are not students, they're soldiers. Our faculty is not a faculty, they're sergeants and trainers, training an army to reach America with the gospel of Christ and to save our country. That isn't all. Hyles Anderson College...
Okay, just pause there for a minute. They're creating an army to go out and save America. I mean, it's not even biblically accurate. You're not going to save this country. But we're going to talk about his army that he's created here in just a couple minutes. Let's watch. Listen to what he says here. We get into this.
It's just not only an army, it's a family. I'm not the chancellor, I'm the father. I'm the father. I'm the father.
Okay, and I repeated a bunch of times there. I have him just cut the audio and repeated it. Yeah. Thought that was kind of interesting. You say, oh, that's not what he meant. He's not a Catholic father. You know, and stuff like this. He acted like one. He acted like the Pope. Same kind of a thing there. Here you have Steven Anderson right here, right now. This is the one day ago here, as of the 16th of August 2017. Here's his Babylon USA thing. Go down through, and boom, right there. Recommending Jack Hyles. And originally he had on his, you know, let me see if I can find that real quickly here. I go into it, go back. I thought I had that. Maybe it's not in this, maybe it's the intro thing to it or whatever. Oh yeah, right there. Here you have the original Repentance Blacklist website. They changed it now, but here you have Steven Anderson and Jack Hyles. He was posting Jack Hyles' studies. Steven Anderson is not graduate, but he almost graduated from Hyles Anderson College. But he's come out and, act like he didn't go to Bible college or something like this. And check this out. This guy here, Rick Jacoby, he says, I noticed that Steven Anderson deleted from his Facebook page that he attended Hyles Anderson the day after you posted your intro video to this series. Yeah. Yep. And this whole cult following of Steven Anderson, they employ the exact same techniques of this thing of harassing people that disagree with them, doing these campaigns to just go and just flock to the video, post a whole bunch of nasty comments, fill it with profanity and whatever else they can, and it's just like, I mean, it's kind of like, Steven Anderson, this, military that this army of these hyper soul winners that Jack Hyles wanted to create. I think Steven Anderson's the head of the thing, head of this witnessing organization. I mean, I shouldn't have compared, Anderson's cult to active duty military that are involved with human intelligence there, military spook type of stuff, because that would be inaccurate. I mean, Steven Anderson wouldn't be, duping people into watching his videos so that they could make lists of people that are, patriotic and stuff like that. He wouldn't do it, never do a thing like that. He wouldn't turn in people that watch him or anything, I'm sure. Yeah, but this guy here, Joe Major, watched a little bit of this thing here just to see, okay, who's this guy? He was raised at Hack, raised there. All these guys go back, find it interesting too that Anderson has the Roman Catholic depiction of the Trinity, the Godhead, right there, defending it. It's so disgusting. And again, oh, come on, you're stretching. Why on earth, after all this stuff that's come out about Jack Hyles, why would you post one of the guy's sermons? It's ridiculous. Steven Anderson and his cult following are trying to become the Baptist movement. They're trying to do this thing. And by implication, they come out and they say, we're Baptists, and if you believe the King James Bible, well, you're a Baptist as well. So those of us that say, I do not call myself a Baptist. I did at one point in time, but I don't anymore. But those of us that believe the King James Bible, they are trying to lump us in with this system. Just absolutely disgusting. So, anybody at all that comes out and defends Steven Anderson and this Jack Hyles thing, anybody that does not come out against Jack Hyles, mark it down, they're completely fake. I mean, how can you as a Christian defend a man that's just surrounded by sex perversion? He's involved in sex perversion, cover-ups of child molesters, cover-ups of murder. Just disgusting. Letting people worship him, using mind control. Get away from Baptist churches. Again, both families, two of the families that I talked about earlier. The one that was there going to a Baptist church and the pastor and his wife were having sex orgies. They came out and said, yeah, we should have listened to you. We should have left that Baptist church before things got really bad. And the brother that had his twin daughters, his precious daughters, molested by the Baptist preacher. He said to me, yeah, he said, I should have gotten out. I should have listened. I should have gotten away from that whole Baptist system. If you are in a Baptist church, you need to get out of it. If your pastor is the real deal, first of all, he'll come out and he'll speak against Jack Hyles. If he covers up for Jack Hyles, and maybe he's never heard the facts, I'll take it easy on him. I would have covered up for Jack Hyles. I know Ruckman covered up for Jack Hyles and things. Did Ruckman know the facts? I don't know. Okay? I have no idea. I can't see how he could have known what was going on with Jack Hyles and defend it. It's really, really bad. But if you're going to some Baptist church and the pastor is a Hyles guy, big time hardcore Hyles guy, and he will not listen to anything about, against Jack Hyles, I'd run away from that place. Okay? Run as fast as you can. And if your pastor is the right kind of pastor, and I've known Bible-believing preachers that they're confronted about the thing of a church building, and they'll change. I've known a couple guys that have done that. Had Baptist churches and the whole thing, they get shown the truth about church buildings are not scriptural. And the whole thing is a false system. It goes back to Catholicism. It does not go back to the Bible. It makes all kinds of problems when you're in these church buildings. And I've known, Bible-believing Baptist preachers that have said, you know what, you're right. The scriptures and the arguments and everything else are totally against these church buildings. We need to start doing it the biblical way. House church. Or meeting in places that we aren't doing the whole suit and tie, the whole Baptist thing of Jack Hyles, this cult. If you have a pastor that's not like that, then you have no obligation to him, and you need to get away from him. So, very, very, very important subject. We need to get the truth out there. The Baptist church is wicked. Okay? Just as simple as that. It's going to be it. Thank you for watching.